As brands move from bricks to clicks, Brand Aid provides expert resources and insights. Welcome to the Brand Aid video conversation. And that raises an interesting question because we've seen this, and I know I've been involved in a case recently with a situation where sometimes people don't register at all, or they wait a long time to register.
Right.
And that can get into an issue of what's called territorial rights. And because in the United States, one can still acquire some rights without registering, which is kind of seems like it's a little bit contradictory, but that's the law.
I mean, in this country, we've come from a tradition of, if you will, small shopkeepers, small farmers, as Jefferson would say, where we don't want to force every single person in a small localized business. You know, my local dry cleaner who has a business area of 10 square blocks, to force her to file an application in Washington, even though the fees aren't that great, you still have to hire expensive lawyers like yourself, you know, and it's just not necessary because and so what the law allows is my dry cleaner to have territorial rights. So for 10 blocks, basically no one else can name their dry cleaner the same name as hers. And talk about terrible trademarks, by the way. I don't want to pick on my dry cleaner, but the name of her dry cleaning is Express Dry Cleaning. So that is about the worst trademark I could think of because, as we said before, it's very descriptive. But assuming she had a good trademark for her dry cleaner, it would only extend to the area of her use and reputation. So as far as she had customers and people came from 10 blocks or 20 blocks, that would define her zone of trademark rights. And we see this very often in the restaurant business. I've done a lot of trademark work in the restaurant area, as you have. And we see this often where people have a small restaurant and they don't think about it. I mean, they give it a name, and maybe they'll get a state registration in the state of California or a DBA in Los Angeles County, which again gives them very, very limited rights. And they don't. But unfortunately, most of the time, it's not an arbitrary name like a Pepsi or Xerox or any of those made-up kind of names. They're more common names, and or somebody's last name, surname, and they'll just be going tripping along their own way in their own little business for many, many years, and then unbeknownst to them, someone in Tennessee or in Maine or in someplace else came across the exact same name. Maybe it's their surname as well. And the next thing you know, they start their own restaurant business. Well, as long as the two of them, one stays in Maine and one stays in California, there's no problem.
Yeah, they're never going to run into each other.
Although the internet, and we should talk about this, has created a potential overlap that never happened before. But generally, those two can coexist. But what happens when the one in Maine decides to franchise or expand, and the next thing you know, they're in the Midwest, and the next thing you know, they're in Arizona or Nevada, they're in Vegas, where you have a lot of people going back and forth between California and Vegas, and then you have this potential for running into each other. The only solution, really, in terms of each of them, is someone should have, being the operative word, filed first for a federal trademark registration. Because when you file, you get your claim on file, you got your rights from the date you file, and it establishes that beachhead we talked about to give you time to develop, whether it's developing the business or the product or developing a larger geographic breadth to a certain extent if you file first. But the caveat to remember there is even when you file, let's say you file on January 1, 2013, for restaurant services, any other restaurant in this country that's been in business up to that date will always be able to use their name in their locality and have that protected zone of use and reputation, whatever it may be. So even filing the application doesn't cut off the prior users, it just cuts off anybody subsequent. Right, which is still very, very helpful, obviously, because there could be somebody in Michigan who all of a sudden comes up with the same name and starts. There are only so many ways to names for hot dog places or hamburger places.